The flashbulbs cut through the New York night like lightning. Outside one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, an establishment usually reserved for Hollywood A-listers and Wall Street power brokers, the paparazzi swarmed. And there, emerging from the shadows of a velvet-roped entrance, were two faces no one expected to see together after dark. Carlos Alcaraz, Spain's fearless prodigy, the reigning champion with his trademark grin, walked side by side with Britain's golden girl Emma Raducanu. Their laughter spilled into the night as if the city itself had become their private stage. Cameras clicked, questions flew, and suddenly the tennis world had a new obsession. Were these? The whispers began almost instantly. Onlookers claimed they shared more than a meal. Playful glances, shared dessert, moments of quiet intimacy shielded from the prying eyes of fans. To the outside world, it looked less like two colleagues sharing supper and more like the soft beginnings of a romance. By the time they left through a discreet side exit, holding themselves with the kind of closeness only familiarity allows, the gossip mill was already running at full throttle. Tabloids splashed the images across front pages. "Tennis's new power couple?" screamed one headline. Another read, "Raducanu and Alcaraz, love in the Big Apple." For a sport that thrives on rivalry and rivalry alone, the idea of two rising stars united not by competition but by affection was irresistible. And yet, this dinner was not the true beginning. To understand the weight of that Manhattan night, we must travel back to 2021. A summer of breakthroughs, shocks, and first glances. For it was then, in the crucible of Grand Slam tennis, that the threads of this unlikely connection first began to weave together. Before New York dinners and whispers of romance, there was the summer of 2021. It was a season that rewrote tennis history and introduced two teenagers to the glare of the global stage. Emma Raducanu, the teenager from Bromley with Romanian and Chinese roots, arrived at Wimbledon as a wild card. Few outside Britain had even heard her name. Yet match by match, set by set, she transformed into the story of the summer. With her fearless ground strokes and unshakable calm, she stormed into the second week, capturing the nation's heart. The press christened her the girl who made Britain believe again. Overnight she became a symbol of a youthful promise. On the other side of Europe, another story unfolded. Carlos Alcaraz, a wiry Spaniard from El Palmar, stepped onto the grass courts of Wimbledon for the very first time. In one unforgettable 5-set thriller, he announced himself to the tennis world. Commentators spoke of his electric forehand, his hunger, his maturity beyond his years. In Spain, whispers began. Was this the new Nadal? Though they did not share the same court, their trajectories were strangely parallel. Two teenagers, fearless in the face of giantesses, capturing headlines not for trophies but for daring to dream. It was then, insiders say, that their paths quietly crossed. Backstage at Wimbledon, amid the buzz of locker rooms and media scrums, Emma and Carlos exchanged their first words. A casual introduction, a congratulatory nod, perhaps even a joke about how neither expected to last this long in the tournament. To the outside world, it was nothing more than polite camaraderie, but for the two of them, it was the start of a quiet friendship. In the weeks that followed, messages were exchanged. Not daily, not obsessive, but enough to keep the connection alive. Words of encouragement after victories, a simple keep going after defeats. Two young stars, continents apart, yet somehow orbiting the same universe. By the end of that summer, as Emma shocked the tennis world again with her impossible U.S. Open triumph, Carlos was watching. Friends close to him claim he texted her that night, "Incredible, you've made history." Emma's reply, simple yet telling, "Thank you, amigo. Next time you'll do the same." At the time, it was nothing more than mutual admiration, but with hindsight, perhaps it was the first spark, one that would quietly burn, waiting for the right moment to ignite. By the time the U.S. Open rolled around in 2025, the whispers of camaraderie between Carlos Alcaraz and Emma Raducanu had already been lingering for years. Yet no one could have predicted the spectacle that awaited when Alcaraz, reigning champion and global superstar, extended an invitation that left Emma both flattered and bewildered. "Play mixed doubles with me," he had said months before. Emma laughed it off at first, assuming it was one of Carlos's playful pranks. After all, this was the man who had conquered Grand Slams, who carried the aura of inevitability every time he stepped onto a court. But Carlos was insistent. He wasn't joking. He wanted her as his partner, not just for show, but because he believed their chemistry would electrify the crowd. And electrify it did. When they walked out together on the blistering hard courts of Flushing Meadows, the atmosphere shifted. The crowd didn't just cheer. They roared as though sensing history in the making. From the first rally, every glance, every exchange of smiles, every playful nudge between points became part of the narrative. Emma, typically composed, burst into laughter after Carlos teased her over a missed volley. Carlos, ever the showman, threw his arm around her shoulder between games as if to say, "We're in this together." Even when the scoreline turned against them and defeat loomed inevitable in the opening round, none of it mattered. The scoreboard was irrelevant. What the fans carried away was not the loss, but the image of two young stars radiating joy, connection, and something tantalizingly close to intimacy. Social media erupted within minutes. Instagram lit up with Emma's cheeky post, "So crazy! Thanks, partner." Carlos's reply was even more teasing. Still waiting for those Spanish words. "Gracias, partner." It was light-hearted, innocent on the surface, but the undertone was irresistible. Fans clipped the moments into TikTok loops. Comment sections filled with declarations that tennis had found its new golden couple. The hashtag #Karma, Carlos and Emma, trended higher than the actual champions of the day. Overnight, a doubles match that technically ended in failure had become the most talked-about storyline of the tournament. But it wasn't just the internet that noticed. Commentators, journalists, even fellow players spoke of the energy between them. "You don't fake that kind of chemistry," one former champion remarked on live television. And in the buzzing media room beneath Arthur Ashe Stadium, the questions grew sharper. Were they just partners for the tournament, or something more? Emma and Carlos both laughed off the speculation, insisting it was all in good fun. Yet their smiles, lingering, knowing, just a little too warm, only poured fuel onto an already blazing fire. If the mixed doubles debut had been the spark, then social media became the wildfire. Within hours of their loss at the U.S. Open, the internet had crowned Carlos Alcaraz and Emma Raducanu as tennis's most captivating duo. Twitter feeds filled with screenshots of stolen glances. TikTok edits played on loop, soundtracked by romantic ballads. On Instagram, fan accounts with names like Alcaraz Raducanu Forever and Team Karma sprouted overnight, each dedicated to dissecting their every interaction. One clip in particular went viral. Carlos applauding Emma during practice, his face lit with admiration, and someone captioned it, "Look at the way he looks at her." And within hours it had racked up 1 million views. Another video captured Emma laughing uncontrollably after Carlos whispered something between points. Fans slowed it down, analyzed her body language, and declared it proof that something more was brewing. And then came the paparazzi. Just days after their mixed doubles appearance, whispers turned into headlines. A group of photographers claiming they had spotted Carlos and Emma slipping into a Manhattan hotspot, one of those velvet-draped establishments where celebrities hide in plain sight. The photos told the story tabloids craved, the pair seated in a secluded corner, sharing dessert, leaning closer than necessary. In one grainy shot, Emma's hand rested lightly on Carlos's arm, a gesture subtle yet explosive when frozen under the paparazzi lens. The Daily Mail wasted no time. Alcaraz and Raducanu, romance served courtside? Spanish outlets countered with their own sensational spin. Nuestro Carlos encuentra el amor en Nueva York. Meanwhile, British breakfast television debated whether Emma's private life should be scrutinized at all, but by then, the narrative was unstoppable. Speculation intensified when rumors surfaced that Emma had been introduced to Carlos's parents backstage at the tournament. Eyewitnesses described warm smiles, even hugs, exchanged in the players' lounge. Days later, Carlos was reportedly seen at a quiet dinner with Emma's family. Nothing was officially confirmed, of course, but when has a lack of confirmation ever stopped the rumor mill? In the age of Instagram stories and TikTok confessions, even silence becomes a statement. And the silence of Carlos and Emma, no denials, no clarifications, just knowing smiles, only deepened the intrigue. By now, fans weren't just asking if they were dating, they were already planning ahead. "When's the wedding?" joked one viral tweet. Others began imagining them as the new Chris Evert and Jimmy Connors, a modern echo of tennis's most famous romance. What had begun as an innocent doubles partnership was now a full-blown cultural phenomenon. And as their every move in New York was tracked, analyzed, and magnified, one question refused to die down. Was this the birth of tennis's next great love story, or merely a beautiful illusion spun beneath the bright lights of Manhattan? In tennis, opposites often created the most compelling partnerships. On paper, Carlos Alcaraz and Emma Raducanu could not be more different. He is the fiery Spaniard, a product of the Mediterranean sun, explosive, daring, with a forehand that could break through walls. She is the elegant Brit, precise and calculating, her composure on court often mistaken for aloofness. Where Carlos thrives in chaos, Emma shines in clarity. He brings fire, she brings ice. And together they strike a balance that has captivated millions. It isn't only their games that complement each other. Their personalities, too, seem to form a kind of yin and yang. Carlos, with his easy humor and quick smile, disarms the tension in any room. Emma, sharp-witted and quietly confident, grounds him with her calm intelligence. Journalists began to note how she steadied his exuberance, while he drew out a more relaxed, playful side of her. Rumors of secret training sessions only fueled the mystique. Insiders whispered that away from the cameras they carved out pockets of time to hit together, trading ground strokes and laughter in an empty practice courts under the cover of night. Witnesses described an almost cinematic scene. Emma leaning against the net post as Carlos demonstrated a new shot, the two of them laughing as though the world outside didn't exist. To those who saw it, it felt less like practice and more like a date disguised as drills. Then there were the family connections. A grainy photo circulated of Carlos joining Emma and her parents for dinner in London, the young Spaniard reportedly charming them with stories of his childhood in Murcia. A week later, gossip blogs claimed Emma had spent an evening at a gathering hosted by Carlos's family during a European tournament. Neither camp ever confirmed the meetings, but the rumors were too delicious for fans to resist. To the outside observer, these were simply coincidences, small human moments blown out of proportion. But for supporters invested in the narrative, they became pieces of a puzzle, proof that what the world saw in New York was only the tip of a deeper bond. Sports thrives on contrast. Federer's elegance against Nadal's grit, Borg's ice against McEnroe's fire. Yet here the contrast wasn't a rivalry but a union. Carlos and Emma weren't fighting each other across a net. They were standing side by side, each completing what the other lacked. And that, perhaps, is why the story has become so irresistible. Because in a sport obsessed with individual battles, the sight of two stars finding balance not through competition, but through companionship, feels like something greater than tennis. For all the photos, the headlines, the whispers, and the laughter, one truth remains. Nobody outside Carlos Alcaraz and Emma Raducanu truly knows what lies between them. The world has seen the dinners in Manhattan, the playful doubles match, the glances across the core. But what does it all amount to? Love, friendship, or something that slips tantalizingly in between. The media cannot resist shaping it into a love story. It is too perfect, too cinematic. Two prodigies rising from obscurity at the same moment in history. Two teenagers who grew into stars under the same lights. Two players whose personalities mirror the eternal dance of fire and ice. Every element feels designed for romance. Yet when asked, both smile politely, deflecting with the same refrain. We're just good friends. And still, the silence between their words is louder than any denial. When Emma appears in Carlos's player box, fans dissect her expression frame by frame. When Carlos posts a photo of a New York skyline, speculation explodes over whether Emma took it. Even the most mundane gestures, liking a post, exchanging emojis, become fuel for an audience desperate for confirmation. It is, in truth, bigger than tennis now. Their story has slipped beyond sport into the realm of myth. Like Connors and Everett decades before, Carlos and Emma have become a cultural talking point, a fascination that refuses to fade. Only they know the reality, yet perhaps that is precisely what keeps the world so enthralled, the mystery. For Emma, the composed Brit, who stunned the globe with her U.S. Open triumph, and Carlos, the exuberant Spaniard destined to dominate an era, their legacies are already secure. But together they offer something else, something rarer. They offer the dream of romance on a stage usually reserved for rivalry. So what happens next? Will we see them walk onto court together again, this time with titles on the line? Will the whispers of late-night dinners evolve into something undeniable? Or will this story remain forever a tantalizing what-if, a sporting fable retold in hushed voices for decades? One thing is certain. Whenever Carlos Alcaraz and Emma Raducanu step into the same spotlight, the world will stop to watch, to wonder, and to believe.